Admiral Zethkar stood before the assembled Galactic Council, his 6 arms spread wide in what his species considered a gesture of absolute authority. The massive chamber fell silent as representatives from 47 civilized worlds turned their attention to the Dominion's supreme military commander. The air itself seemed to thicken with anticipation as holographic displays showed the strategic positioning of fleets across known space. "Esteemed council members," Zethkar began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of military tradition, "today marks the end of our patience with the primitive species inhabiting the 3rd planet of the Sol system. For too long, we have tolerated their aggressive expansion, their reckless colonization, and their complete disregard for established galactic protocols." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Velkari delegation clicked their mandibles in approval, while the crystalline Asthari pulsed with colors that indicated deep concern. Earth had been a topic of heated debate for nearly a decade since their first contact with galactic civilization. "The humans," Zethkar continued, pronouncing the word as if it left a bitter taste in his mouth, "have violated 17 separate colonial treaties. They have established unauthorized settlements in disputed territories. They have refused to acknowledge the authority of this council on no fewer than 32 occasions. Most disturbing of all, they have begun arming their civilian populations and fortifying every single one of their colonies." The Dominion Admiral activated a 3-dimensional display that filled the center of the chamber. Red dots representing human settlements spread like a viral infection across what had once been considered safe, regulated space. Each settlement was marked with defensive capabilities that made even the most experienced military minds shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Look at this madness," Zethkar gestured with 2 of his arms while the others remained rigidly at attention. "They have turned cargo haulers into warships. They have built weapons platforms disguised as mining operations. They have trained their children to operate military equipment as if it were some sort of recreational activity. This is not the behavior of a civilized species seeking peaceful integration into our community." Representative Thylos of the Peaceful Coalition raised a tentacle in objection. "Admiral, surely diplomatic solutions remain available. The humans have shown remarkable technological advancement in a short period. Perhaps they simply need more time to understand our ways." Zethkar's primary eyes focused on the coalition representative with the intensity of a predator selecting prey. "Time, you say?" In the 3 years since formal contact, they have quadrupled their military production. They have reverse-engineered our technology and improved upon it in ways our scientists claimed were impossible. They have created weapon systems that frankly disturb our military analysts. The holographic display shifted to show human ship designs. Unlike the elegant, flowing curves preferred by most galactic civilizations, human vessels appeared brutal and functional. Armor plating covered every surface, weapon ports bristled from unexpected angles, and modifications had been welded onto modifications in a chaotic pattern that somehow made perfect sense. "Their ship design philosophy," Zethkar explained, "appears to be based on the assumption that everything will try to kill them, and they need to kill it first. They have no dedicated science vessels, no pure exploration craft, no civilian transports. Every single ship they build can fight, and fight effectively." The Asthari delegate's crystalline form shifted to deep purple, indicating philosophical confusion. "But Admiral, this contradicts their stated peaceful intentions. Their diplomats speak eloquently of cooperation and mutual benefit." "They're diplomats," Zethkar replied with what passed for a smile among his species, "wear concealed weapons to peace negotiations. Their cultural exchange programs focus heavily on tactical doctrine and defensive strategies. Their trade missions spend most of their time documenting our military capabilities and asking detailed questions about our logistics networks." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. This information was new to most of the council members, classified intelligence that the Dominion had been gathering for months. The realization that humanity had been conducting what amounted to reconnaissance missions under the guise of diplomacy sent waves of unease through the assembly. Furthermore, the admiral continued, raising his voice to restore order, our intelligence operatives have discovered something truly alarming about human culture. They do not have a warrior class. They do not have a military caste. Every single human, regardless of their civilian profession, receives what they call basic combat training and maintains proficiency with personal weapons throughout their lives. This revelation caused several delegates to stand in shock. The concept of an entire species being militarily trained was unprecedented in galactic civilization. Most species had evolved beyond such primitive necessities, delegating warfare to specialized military branches while civilians pursued peaceful endeavors. Their entertainment, Zethkar pressed on relentlessly, consists largely of simulated combat scenarios. Their sports involve controlled violence. Their literature celebrates warfare and individual heroism in battle. Their educational system includes tactical training alongside mathematics and language skills. This is not a species that can be peacefully integrated into civilized society. Representative Mora of the Scientific Collective interjected with clinical interest. Admiral, our xenobiological studies suggest this militaristic tendency may be evolutionary. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a world with remarkably hostile conditions. Every other intelligent species we have encountered developed intelligence as a means of avoiding predators. Humans developed intelligence to become better predators themselves. The weight of this observation settled over the council like a cold blanket. In all their expansion across the galaxy, they had never encountered a species where intelligence had evolved specifically to enhance killing efficiency rather than to avoid conflict entirely. Precisely, Zethkar nodded gravely. Which brings us to the immediate threat. Our long-range surveillance has detected massive construction projects throughout human space. They are not building colonies or research facilities. They are building fortress worlds. Every single human settlement is becoming a military installation capable of independent defense. The holographic display zoomed in on several human colonies, showing defensive emplacements that would make a Dominion military base envious. Orbital weapons platforms, underground bunker networks, and shield generators powerful enough to protect entire continents were under construction on worlds that had been peaceful agricultural settlements just months earlier. They claim these measures are for protection against potential future threats, the Admiral continued. When asked to specify these threats, they simply state that in their experience, peace is temporary and preparedness is eternal. This philosophy is fundamentally incompatible with galactic civilization. The Velkari delegate stood, her insectoid features clicking with agitation. Admiral, what specific action do you propose? Surely you are not suggesting military intervention against a species that has not technically violated any laws of aggression. Zethkar's expression grew grim. Honored delegate, the humans have committed no acts of open aggression because they are preparing for something much worse. Our strategic analysts have concluded that humanity is positioning itself to challenge galactic authority itself. They are not building defenses against external threats. They are building defenses against us. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The implications of this accusation were staggering. No species in recorded galactic history had ever attempted to challenge the established order. The Galactic Council represented 47 civilizations spanning thousands of worlds. The very idea that one species would consider opposing such overwhelming force seemed beyond rational consideration. The evidence is overwhelming. Zethkar activated another display showing strategic positioning charts. Human colonies form defensive networks. Their trade routes double as supply lines for military operations. Their exploration missions consistently target resource-rich systems that would be strategically valuable in prolonged conflict. They are preparing for galactic war. Representative Thylos of the Peaceful Coalition trembled with distress. But why? What could possibly motivate such madness? We have offered them full membership in galactic civilization. We have shared our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. What more could they want? The Admiral's response chilled every being in the chamber. According to our psychological profiles, humans do not want to join galactic civilization. They want to reshape it according to their own principles. They believe that peace maintained through superior firepower is more stable than peace maintained through diplomatic cooperation. They intend to impose their philosophy on the entire galaxy. The revelation sparked immediate debate. Some delegates argued for increased diplomatic efforts, others for economic sanctions, still others for complete isolation of human space. But Admiral Zethkar raised all 6 arms for silence, and his next words changed everything. Esteemed Council, the time for debate has passed. 3 hours ago, human forces began what they call preemptive defensive operations against our outer monitoring stations. They have already fired the first shots. The only question remaining is whether we respond with decisive action or allow them to continue their preparations until they can challenge us on equal terms. The chamber exploded in chaos. Delegates shouted questions, demanded evidence, called for immediate military response, pleaded for peaceful solutions. Through it all, Admiral Zethkar stood calmly at the center of the storm, watching as galactic civilization grappled with a threat unlike anything in their collective history. When order was finally restored, the vote was closer than anyone had expected, but the result was clear. By a margin of 28-19, with 47 civilizations commanding over 3,000 worlds and fleets numbering in the millions of vessels, the Galactic Council formally declared war on humanity. As the declaration was transmitted across subspace networks to every corner of known space, Admiral Zethkar allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans had Force General Sarah Chen stood in the war room deep beneath Geneva, surrounded by holographic displays that showed the current positions of every human asset in known space. The declaration of war had arrived 6 hours ago, and in those 6 hours, humanity had transformed from a species seeking peaceful integration into the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Report!" Chen commanded, her voice carrying the calm authority that had made her the unanimous choice for Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. Colonel Martinez gestured toward the tactical display. "Ma'am, Operation Sleeping Giant is proceeding exactly as planned. Every single human colony has successfully transitioned to full military readiness. Our disguised defensive installations are coming online across all systems. The aliens have no idea what they're actually attacking." The displays showed what appeared to be a shocking transformation, but Chen knew better. This wasn't a transformation at all. This was simply humanity removing its disguise. For 3 years, while galactic diplomats debated and deliberated, every human settlement had been preparing for this exact moment. "How long until their fleets reach our outer systems?" she asked. "First contact in 18 hours, ma'am. The Dominion spearhead consists of approximately 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. They're approaching the Proxima system, expecting to find a lightly defended mining colony." Chen smiled, and everyone in the room felt a chill. And what will they actually find? "Mining colony Proxima 7 ceased to exist approximately 3 years ago, ma'am. What exists there now is Firebase Alpha, the most heavily fortified position in human space outside of Sol itself. The miners they've been tracking are actually the 3rd Orbital Defense Legion. The cargo vessels in the system are converted heavy cruisers with experimental weapons systems." The general nodded with satisfaction. "And the Velkari task force heading for New Shanghai?" Lieutenant Commander Wong stepped forward. her expression grim with anticipation. They're about to discover that New Shanghai's agricultural biodomes are actually military production facilities. The farming equipment they've been watching us transport is actually a full armored division. The irrigation systems are underground missile networks. Chen walked among the displays, examining each theater of the coming conflict. The galaxy's military planners had made every mistake possible when dealing with humanity. They had assumed human settlements were what they appeared to be on the surface. They had taken diplomatic statements at face value. Most critically, they had completely misunderstood human strategic thinking. "Ma'am," called out Captain Rodriguez from the intelligence station, "we're receiving real-time feeds from our embedded assets within the galactic fleets." The main display shifted to show the interior of an alien command bridge. Admiral Zethkar stood confidently before his tactical displays, addressing his staff with obvious satisfaction. "Maintain standard approach vectors," they could hear him saying. "Intelligence indicates minimal defensive capabilities. Human settlements appear to rely primarily on distance and concealment for protection. We should encounter no significant resistance." Chen laughed, and the sound made hardened military veterans shift uncomfortably. "Distance and concealment," she repeated. "Colonel Martinez, remind me what our actual defensive philosophy is." "Maximum firepower concentrated at optimal killing range, ma'am. Every approach vector to every human position is a carefully planned killing field. We've spent 3 years turning space itself into a weapon." The truth was even more devastating than the colonel's summary suggested. Humanity had not built defenses the way other species understood the concept. They had built traps. Every trade route, every shipping lane, every apparent safe passage through human space had been carefully prepared to channel enemy forces into predetermined positions where concentrated firepower could destroy them with maximum efficiency. "Show me the Proxima approach," Chen commanded. The display shifted to show what appeared to be empty space surrounding the Proxima system. To galactic sensors, it looked like a straightforward approach to a lightly defended mining operation. The reality was considerably different. "The Dominion fleet will enter the outer system here." Captain Rodriguez indicated a point in seemingly empty space. "They will detect what appears to be a standard warning beacon. Probably assume it's a request for them to identify themselves." "And what is it, actually?" Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. "It's a targeting beacon, ma'am. The moment they respond to it, every concealed weapons platform in a 3 million kilometer radius will have their exact position, speed, heading, and electromagnetic signature." The display showed the true nature of human preparation. What looked like asteroid fields were actually weapons platforms. What appeared to be space debris was sophisticated sensor networks. What seemed like empty vacuum contained invisible minefields that would activate only when optimal target positioning was achieved. "The Dominion Admiral will then proceed to what our intelligence suggests he believes is the main mining facility," Rodriguez continued. "He'll probably demand immediate surrender and expect compliance." Chen nodded. Instead, he'll discover that Proxima 7 isn't a mining colony at all. "Show me what he's actually going to find." The display shifted to reveal Firebase Alpha in all its terrifying glory. The facility that had been disguised as a mining operation was actually a fortress that could house 50,000 combat personnel and maintain orbital supremacy over an entire star system. Weapons batteries that could crack moons dotted its surface. Shield generators powerful enough to deflect relativistic projectiles created overlapping fields of protection. Manufacturing facilities capable of replacing damaged equipment operated around the clock. "And the personnel defending it?" Chen asked. "The 3rd Orbital Defense Legion, ma'am. 2,000 of the most experienced zero-G combat specialists in human space. They've been training in this exact facility against this exact scenario for 3 years. They know every weapon, every defensive system, every tactical advantage the base provides. They're not defending their position, they're operating a weapon system the size of a small moon. What the galactic forces could not comprehend was that humanity had spent 3 years not just preparing for war, but preparing for this specific war against these specific enemies. Every diplomatic mission had been an intelligence-gathering operation. Every cultural exchange had been tactical reconnaissance. Every trade negotiation had been an opportunity to study galactic military doctrine and identify weaknesses. "Ma'am," called out Commander Kim from the Strategic Planning Station, "we're getting confirmation that all phases of Operation Sleeping Giant have been activated. Every human position in space is now functioning as intended." Chen turned to address the entire war room. "Ladies and gentlemen, the galaxy has made a fundamental error in judgment. They believe they are fighting a species that stumbled into space and got lucky with some advanced technology. They think we're primitives who got our hands on weapons we don't understand." She gestured toward the displays showing galactic fleet movements. "What they're actually fighting is a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of warfare. Every human who walks the streets of Earth has received tactical training that would qualify them as elite soldiers in most galactic militaries. Our civilian population consists of 2 billion people who know how to operate military equipment and have been psychologically prepared for total war." The truth was even more profound than military preparation. Humanity had looked at galactic civilization and recognized it for what it was: a collection of species that had forgotten how to fight. Centuries of peace maintained through diplomatic cooperation had left them utterly unprepared for dealing with a species that viewed conflict as a natural state requiring constant readiness. "Colonel Martinez," Chen continued, "remind me what the galactic military doctrine assumes about civilian populations during wartime." "They assume civilians will evacuate to safe areas and remain there until hostilities conclude, ma'am. They have no concept of civilian resistance or population-based military support." "And what is our civilian population actually doing right now?" Martinez smiled grimly. "Every human civilian is transitioning to their assigned military support role. Factory workers are switching to weapons production. Transport pilots are becoming military logistics. Agricultural specialists are managing food supplies for extended siege conditions. Computer programmers are engaging in electronic warfare operations." The displays showed the true scope of human preparation. While galactic civilizations maintained clear distinctions between military and civilian populations, humanity had no such division. Every human settlement was simultaneously a civilian community and a military installation. Every human citizen was simultaneously a peaceful resident and a trained combatant. "Ma'am," Commander Kim reported, "we're getting real-time intelligence from our assets within the Velkari task force approaching New Shanghai. Their admiral is confident they'll secure the system within hours of arrival." "Show me what they're expecting to find," Chen ordered. The display showed galactic intelligence reports on New Shanghai. According to their information, it was an agricultural colony with approximately 50,000 civilian residents engaged in food production for other human settlements. The infrastructure appeared to consist primarily of biodomes, irrigation systems, and cargo handling facilities. And the reality? The display shifted to show New Shanghai as it actually existed. The agricultural biodomes were advanced manufacturing facilities producing everything from personal weapons to orbital defense platforms. The irrigation systems were actually sophisticated missile networks capable of engaging threats throughout the system. The cargo handling facilities were military spaceports designed to support rapid deployment of heavy combat equipment. The 50,000 civilian farmers are actually the 7th Colonial Defense Division and the 12th Engineering Corps, Commander Kim reported. They've spent 3 years preparing New Shanghai to become the most defensible position in human space outside of Earth itself. Chen nodded with satisfaction. And their psychological preparation? Every person in that system has been preparing for this exact scenario, ma'am. They know the galactic forces are coming. They know what those forces expect to find. They know they're going to completely surprise enemies who have never encountered serious resistance. What made human preparation truly devastating was not just the military hardware or tactical planning. It was the psychological readiness. Every human in space, Admiral Zethkar stared at his tactical displays in complete disbelief. What had been a routine military operation against a primitive species had become something unprecedented in galactic military history. His fleet was not just losing, it was being systematically destroyed by forces that should not have existed. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, "we've lost contact with the entire Proxima task force, all 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. The last transmission indicated they were engaging what they described as impossible defensive capabilities." The Admiral's 6 arms trembled with a mixture of rage and fear. "Define impossible, Commander." "The humans appear to have converted an entire star system into a weapons platform, sir. The mining colony was actually a military fortress with firepower equivalent to our entire sector fleet. The civilian miners were elite military personnel using weapons technology we don't understand." Zethkar's primary eyes focused on the strategic display, showing the current positions of galactic forces across human space. Red indicators were appearing everywhere as task forces encountered resistance that defied every assumption about human capabilities. "What about the Velkari force approaching New Shanghai?" he demanded. "Admiral Kethara is reporting similar discoveries, sir. The agricultural colony is actually a heavily fortified military installation. The farming equipment they detected was actually armored vehicles. The irrigation systems were underground missile networks." The communication system activated, carrying the strained voice of Admiral Kethara from the New Shanghai approach. "Command, this is impossible. The humans have turned every civilian settlement into a fortress. The agricultural workers are trained soldiers. Their farming equipment is camouflaged military hardware. How did our intelligence miss this?" Zethkar realized with growing horror that their intelligence hadn't missed anything. The humans had deliberately created an elaborate deception that had lasted for 3 years. Every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange, every trade negotiation had been carefully orchestrated to maintain the illusion of a peaceful species while they prepared for total war. "Sir," his communication officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's addressed to all galactic forces and appears to be coming directly from their supreme commander." "Put it through," Zethkar commanded, though he dreaded what he might hear. The main display activated, showing a human female in military uniform standing in what appeared to be an advanced command center. General Sarah Chen looked directly at the camera with the confidence of someone holding superior cards in a deadly game. "Admiral Zethkar," she began, using his name and rank with casual accuracy that implied comprehensive intelligence. "I am General Sarah Chen, Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. I believe there have been some fundamental misunderstandings about the nature of this conflict." Zethkar found himself responding despite his better judgment. "Human, you face the combined might of 47 civilizations commanding 3,000 worlds and millions of vessels. Surrender now, and your species may survive this foolishness." Chen's smile was the most terrifying thing Zethkar had ever seen. "Admiral, you've made several critical errors in your assessment of this situation. First, you assumed that human settlements were what they appeared to be. They're not. Every human position in space is actually a military fortress designed specifically to destroy your forces." The display behind her showed tactical readouts that made Zethkar's tactical staff gasp in recognition. The humans had detailed intelligence on every galactic fleet, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine. They had not just prepared for war, they had prepared for war against specific galactic forces using specific galactic strategies. Second, Chen continued with devastating calm, you assume that human civilian populations would behave like galactic civilian populations during wartime. They won't. Every human civilian is actually a trained combatant prepared to resist any occupation attempt with extreme prejudice. The implications hit Zeth-Kar like a physical blow. Galactic military doctrine assumed that conquering enemy territory involved dealing with helpless civilian populations that would submit to superior force. If every human civilian was actually a trained soldier, then every human settlement would require total destruction rather than simple occupation. Third, and most importantly, Chen's smile became predatory. You assumed that humanity wanted to avoid this conflict. We didn't. We've been preparing for this war since our first contact with galactic civilization because we recognized immediately that it was inevitable. You cannot integrate a species of predators into a community of prey without eventual conflict. Zeth-Kar's tactical displays suddenly erupted with new contacts. Human vessels were appearing throughout galactic space, emerging from concealed positions that should have been impossible to hide. The humans had not just fortified their colonies, they had positioned strike forces throughout galactic territory. How? Zeth-Kar demanded. How did you infiltrate our space without detection? Chen's expression suggested she was enjoying herself immensely. Admiral, for 3 years you've been welcoming human trade missions and cultural exchange programs into your territory. You never questioned why our merchant vessels were so heavily armored or why our cultural attachés spent so much time studying your military installations. You assumed we were primitives trying to learn from superior civilizations. We were actually conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. The truth was devastating. Every human diplomatic mission had been a military reconnaissance operation. Every trade negotiation had been an opportunity to position assets within galactic territory. Every cultural exchange had been preparation for coordinated strikes against galactic infrastructure. Sir, Zeth-Kar's intelligence officer reported with obvious panic, we're detecting massive human strike forces emerging throughout our territory. They appear to have been concealed for months, possibly years. They're moving against our primary naval bases, supply depots, and communication centers. Chen nodded as if she had heard the report. Operation Prometheus is now in full effect, Admiral. While you've been attempting to attack our heavily fortified frontier positions, our strike forces have been moving against your actual strategic assets. You cannot maintain military operations without supplies, communications, and secure bases. The displays showed the scope of human planning with frightening clarity. Strike forces were hitting galactic supply lines with precision that indicated detailed knowledge of logistics networks. Communication centers were being destroyed by sabotage operations that had been prepared for months. Naval bases were under attack by forces that knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. This is impossible, Zeth-Kar whispered. No single species could coordinate operations on this scale across such vast distances. You're thinking like galactic civilization, Admiral, Chen explained, with the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to a slow student. You assume that complex operations require complex command structures with multiple species coordinating through diplomatic channels. Humans think differently. We have a single command structure, unified doctrine, and complete commitment to victory regardless of cost. What Zeth-Kar could not comprehend was the fundamental difference in military psychology. Galactic civilizations had evolved beyond total warfare, creating professional military classes that operated according to established rules and limitations. Humanity had never evolved beyond total warfare. They had simply become more sophisticated at conducting it. Admiral, Chen continued, you are facing a species that has spent its entire evolutionary history perfecting the art of killing. Every human who drew breath when you declared war is now actively engaged in destroying your forces. We have no civilians in the sense you understand the term. We have only combatants and support personnel. Zeth-Kar's communication system erupted with reports from across the galaxy. Human forces were appearing everywhere, attacking everything, using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They were not trying to conquer territory or capture resources. They were trying to destroy galactic civilization's ability to conduct coordinated military operations. "Sir," his tactical officer reported in barely controlled terror, "human forces have just destroyed the Rimward supply depot. That's our primary logistics hub for this entire sector. Without it, we cannot maintain fleet operations for more than a few days." "Similar reports from all sectors, sir," added the intelligence officer. "The humans appear to have identified every critical infrastructure point in our territory and are systematically destroying them. Our fleets are being cut off from resupply and communication." Chen watched their realization with obvious satisfaction. "You're beginning to understand, Admiral. You declared war on a species that has been preparing for total warfare since before your civilizations achieved spaceflight. We don't fight the way you fight because we're not civilized the way you're civilized." Zeth-Kar found himself asking the question that terrified him most. "What do you want? What are your terms for ending this conflict?" Chen's expression became deadly serious. "Admiral, this conflict ends when galactic civilization accepts that humanity will not be integrated into your existing order. We will participate in galactic affairs as an equal partner, not as a junior member seeking approval from species that have forgotten how to defend themselves." The truth behind human strategy became clear. They had never intended to conquer galactic civilization. They had intended to demonstrate that galactic civilization could not conquer them. Every human action had been designed to prove that they were predators masquerading as prey, and that any attempt to treat them as a subordinate species would result in catastrophic consequences. "Furthermore," Chen continued, "galactic military doctrine will be revised to acknowledge human tactical and strategic capabilities. Your assumption that advanced civilization necessarily means peaceful civilization is false. Your assumption that superior numbers automatically mean victory is false. Your assumption that primitive species cannot challenge established orders is false." Zeth-Kar stared at the displays showing the systematic destruction of galactic military infrastructure by forces that had been positioned years in advance. "And if we refuse these terms?" Chen's smile returned, and Zeth-Kar finally understood why humans had smiled when war was declared. "Admiral, you declared war on us. We didn't seek this conflict, but we prepared for it. If you refuse our terms, then this conflict continues until galactic civilization no longer has the capability to threaten humanity." The Admiral realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had forced an entire galaxy to choose between accepting them as equals or facing destruction by a species that was better at warfare than civilizations that had forgotten warfare existed. "Sir," his communication officer reported quietly, "we're receiving surrender requests from fleet commanders throughout our territory. The humans are offering to cease hostilities in exchange for immediate withdrawal from human space and formal recognition of human sovereignty." Zeth-Kar looked at the tactical displays one final time. In 18 hours, the combined might of 47 civilizations had been systematically dismantled by a single species that had spent 3 years preparing for this exact conflict. "Open a channel to all galactic forces," he commanded with the weariness of someone who had finally understood the magnitude of his miscalculation. "This is Admiral Zeth-Kar to all galactic commanders. Cease all offensive operations against human targets. Begin immediate withdrawal to designated safe zones. We are accepting human terms for cessation of hostilities." The galaxy had declared war on humanity, expecting to integrate or eliminate a troublesome species. Instead, they had discovered that some species are simply too dangerous to challenge, and that the smile of a predator is the last thing their prey ever sees. Spent 3 years knowing that war was inevitable and preparing mentally for what that meant. They were not citizens hoping to avoid conflict. They were warriors eager to prove themselves against opponents who had forgotten how to fight. "Ma'am," Captain Rodriguez reported urgently, "the Dominion spearhead has just entered the Proxima outer system. Admiral Zethkar is broadcasting surrender demands to Firebase Alpha." Chen's smile became predatory. "Put it on speakers." The alien admiral's voice filled the war room with absolute confidence. "Human settlement designated Proxima 7. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Your primitive weapons cannot stand against the might of galactic civilization. Submit now, and your lives will be spared." The response came from Colonel Jackson, commanding officer of Firebase Alpha. His voice carried the calm confidence of a professional who had been waiting 3 years for this exact moment. "Galactic Fleet, this is Firebase Alpha. Your surrender demand has been noted and filed under amusing alien misunderstandings. Please prepare to discover what human weapons actually do." Chen turned to her staff. "Gentlemen, ladies, galactic civilization has just learned why humanity smiled when they declared war. It's time to show them what happens when you challenge predators in their own territory. End this confrontation, but it would end quickly. No single species could stand against the combined might of galactic civilization." What the Admiral did not know, what none of them could have known, was that at the exact moment the declaration of war reached Earth, every human military commander, every civilian leader, every ordinary person who heard the news, smiled with the same expression. It was not the smile of beings facing certain death. It was the smile of predators who had finally been given permission to hunt. The galaxy had just made the greatest tactical error in its history. They had given humanity exactly what it had been preparing for, hoping for, and waiting for, since the first human looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. They had given humanity a war it could win.